Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and today we want to talk about biophilic communities, that is, communities that are designed to embrace green environmental wellness in combination with an urbanism or a suburbanism, depending on how you want to describe it, of small communities that live together in with a focus on art and creativity and food and good experience. And we are pleased to be joined by Steve Nygren, who is the founder of Serenbe, which is a community outside of Atlanta in the Chattahoochee Hill Country. Steve, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm good. Happy to join.
We were really interested to hear more about Serenbe after looking at the maps and the pictures of the community. You've got four sort of themed centers within this larger massive green space. Tell us about the Serenbe communities and how did this idea come to embody what you described as a wellness community, amongst other things?
Well, you have to sort of understand the foundation of, I was a hospitality guy opening restaurants around the country, living in the center of Atlanta, having what I thought was the ideal life, and it was. And then a afternoon drive to expose our children to nature and farm animals resulted in us buying a historic farm. And this is right on the edge of Atlanta. It's amazing that there's this rural area that still has not been developed this close to the city. I imagined that we would come out a couple Saturday afternoons. I thought it was a good investment because open land that close to Atlanta would be great. And I found the family was anxious to leave this beautiful house and gardens with pool and meeting rooms and all the trappings to come out here and stay in a shack. We had rented the historic house out because we didn't need another big house, but my wife fixed this shack in the back. And doing that every weekend and every vacation for 3 years was a value shift for me. And I had an opportunity to sell the company, the big house, resigned from most boards, and stepped off the treadmill of life, if you will. Then in my 7th year of retirement, we became concerned that urban sprawl would destroy this paradise that we had found. Right here on the edge, Atlanta is, everything that Atlanta has to offer is right there. 30 minutes to 45 minutes away. And my first reaction to save my backyard was to buy more land. And at 900 acres, I realized I couldn't keep showing up to those closings. And 900, 1,000, 2,000 acres really doesn't protect you in the path of urban sprawl. And so that led to the effort to organize 500 landowners. And we did a land use change of 40,000 acres, modeled it after the English village system, where they had good land laws after World War II that's prevented sprawl. And we passed that in 2002. And then it was my responsibility to take our land and demonstrate how these principles could actually economically and socially work. And that was the beginning of Serenbe, and we broke ground in 2004.
So tell me a little about the four different communities. How are they different, and what does each reflect?
Well, we looked at our basic land plan required a connection to nature, and because of the density, it's together like, from 1930 before, which connects you to your neighbor in a ways that our suburban sprawl has not. But as I looked further as to what really makes for vital communities, I found four pillars that we wanted to incorporate in, and that is art, agriculture, health and wellness, and education. And so as we designed our hamlets, we have designed the commercial core. So it's a group of omegas, and the center of that omega is the commercial center. And so the architecture, the lights, and spaces are designed to encourage those specific disciplines. It's not an absolute. They're not strong rules. It's purely an encouragement and the land plan and building plans encourage it.
So you've attracted about 700 residents, and you also won the Urban Land Institute's first sustainability award. So how do you explain why people love this place when folks ask about Serenbe?
I get that question a lot. And people initially move here for various reasons, but I believe it speaks to core values. It speaks to their heart. If people logically can't figure out why they're attracted or why they should move, but they respond to what we've done. And I believe it's a yearning for a simpler life and a life that does connect us to nature and to one another, even though maybe you cannot identify that. And if we ask people who are making that decision why, it's a variety of reasons. It might be arts, it might be the fresh food, it might be all sorts of things, all ages. But if you ask anyone who's lived here 6 months, they're very clear. It is the connection to their neighbors and the immediate availability of nature.
And you have 70% of the space dedicated to green space, which is just phenomenally wonderful. The idea of that much emphasis on nature is fantastic. Now, you located this in the Chattahoochee Hill Country in order to protect it, as you've explained. Are there other places like this that you've identified or that you believe after flying over them that would be great places to locate a wellness and nature-centric community?
We've had that question a lot, and we believe this is the largest geographic area this close, this part of a metropolitan area that exists in the United States and possibly the world. Because urban areas tend to just spread out unless they hit a natural barrier, and then if you have a mountains or rivers or oceans, you really don't consider that green space. Sure. But I think the important thing to think about is the principles here. It isn't the fact that there's 70% green space. There can be various ratios, but some of these principles can apply to infill areas. As we look at redoing some of our shopping center areas that are now closing, and even in the future, some of these big warehousing areas. So the principles of having nature and density together are the keys, and there are many things integrated into that brings about the quality of life that you'll find here at Serenbe.
So what type of people thrive in the Serenbe community? Are they committed environmentalists first and foremost? Are they enthusiasts about their neighbors, the connections? Who works well in this environment?
It's such a great question. And when I was first talking about what we were doing and talking about the environmental aspects, people had a tendency to ask if it was straw bale houses and everything was zoning or solar. And I realized that communities that lead with environment tend to look like attentional communities, and there's a prejudgment. And so I backed up from all of that and started talking about just having a great place to live. And if you look at all of our early marketing, we don't talk about being environmental or any of these things, but we show incredible design. And that's what we have led with. One of the big environmentalists here in Metro Atlanta, Dennis Creech, who founded Southface, he said that Serenbe has really done more than almost any of the environmental communities because we have thought leaders from various segments that move here because of the quality of life. And then they learn about the environmentalism, and then they take that into their networks. So when I think about who lives here and what the commonality is, it's difficult to identify because we have a complete age range, race range, sexual orientation, political spectrum, everything. But I realize that everyone here, I believe I can confidently say, has a sense of hope. Because that's what they identify to when they come here. There's a spirit. And a pessimist is going to think this is too good to be true, and they tend to not come. And so to have a community that has this incredible spirit of we can do, you just feel it. One of the common things that we hear is everyone waves. And if someone's here 48 hours, they start waving back to total strangers. And that's just a complete sense of amazing. Like I say, I also believe that everyone here has a passport, no matter their economic base or their age. And so everyone here has a global outlook on life. And that's not true of very many communities or groups.
No, in fact, I just returned from a trip to Denver and was out in the sprawling suburbs. And they're defined first by sort of a commercial center that precedes all the other considerations. And it's clear that you've thought about the people and the living experience first. So I guess one of the questions that has come to mind is, do you describe yourself as a real estate developer, or are you a community builder? And is there a difference?
Well, I think there is a big difference, and I think of myself as a placemaker. Mm-hmm. When I was in the hospitality business, we ended up doing restaurants. Coming back to the neighborhoods that had been abandoned in the 60s in the fringes around center cities. And I found that real estate was very affordable. My first restaurant was right in the center of Atlanta in part of the neighborhood that had just the stores were all boarded up. And so we became known as a people through hospitality could change a place. When the Pennsylvania Development Authority worked on Pennsylvania Avenue between the White House and the Capitol, and if you remember that in the 70s, that was a pretty bad place to walk in after dark. We were one of the first 5 restaurants that they got to commit to come in to start changing that in the early 80s. And you look at that area today. So of my 36 restaurants, the majority of them were in places that were depressed, and we turned them around through hospitality. So it was through placemaking. And so as I wanted to develop the area here in an effort to save it, we realized that hospitality was a key piece of placemaking. And our first restaurant, coffee shop, was opened by the time the 4th resident had moved in, which if I were a developer, I would have never taken that step, because developers tend to count rooftops before they put any commercial entity in. Sure.
A lot of people must be bringing parts of their background to the businesses that you're establishing there. You've got bookstores, you've got galleries and things like that. Is that also part of the transition people go through, is to remake what they did in the, let's just call it the old world, to work in this new, more environmentally conscious and community-oriented world that you're creating?
I think that's a fair assessment. We find people move here and suddenly they're inspired to do something different. You have either people in their early years of retirement decide to step back into the business world. Other younger people bring part of what they have already been doing, and this is just an extension of that. And others recreate their lives for a simpler lifestyle.
And do you work with the businesses in order to get them started? I mean, for instance, when I looked and saw that you had a bookstore, I thought, that's fantastic. I would love to be able to wander down and read. But I also am aware of the economics of bookstores, and they are always struggling. Is there a way that you can help ensure that the right mix is there over the course of time?
We find that everyone needs to stand on their own, and everyone does. But we support them in promoting them.
Okay.
And exposing to great things. So it is a New York reporting bookstore. So it's a great place for authors to come and do readings. And we attract people from the greater metropolitan area for many of our things. And so through the events and exposure that we have, and then just the foot traffic that we bring because of all the events we have in arts and lectures and that type of thing.
Now, when looking through the maps and the pictures, I saw condo-like structures, standalone homes, and at a wide range of prices. What kind of homes do you have available in the community, and what's your advice about the best place to live in Serenbe?
Well, here again, we are, rather than a development which tends to have a narrower range, we think of ourselves as building a town. Mm-hmm. And so we have that range, and we'll have a greater range in the future. As far as the best place for anyone to live, it's what meets your lifestyle. Is it contemporary, traditional? What is the size? One thing that we encourage everyone, and many people are ready to downsize, but when you move to Serenbe, you can downsize even more than you expected, because people find they're living in community rather than in the four walls of their house. And so that totally changes your lifestyle. Families with kids, they find that the kids are outside a lot more. The battle on the screens, they don't have that battle, because if kids can go out the back door and meet up with their friends at the tree house and in the woods building forts, they're going to do that absolutely, rather than staying in the house under your parents' eye on a screen. And so that's, it just depends on who you are, where you are in your lifestyle, as to which location is the best for you.
So, not to put you on the spot, what's your favorite part of town?
Well, I'm very fortunate that all three of the daughters that we moved out here have returned with their northern husbands to raise my grandchildren. And they each live in a different part of the community. So I must say that each part of those communities is my favorite.
Well played. So, how affordable is Serenbe for somebody considering moving here? Do you mentioned the questions about solar earlier? Do some of the sustainable designs offset the cost of living in these homes?
Absolutely. You've asked two good questions, and let's see if we can unpack each separately. Let's talk about the solar. The real issue is reducing demand. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's the first question we should be talking about, rather than the type of energy. It's how can you reduce the demand? So every building, every house here has to be certified in one way. We used Earthcraft certification, which is the local certification similar to LEED. In fact, they preceded LEED in certification. And they actually inspect the house a minimum of 3 times. And a well-built house, on average, reduces the energy bill by around 30 to 35% compared to the average. We also have gone from encouraging geothermal to now making geothermal mandatory. We created our own utility to do all of the upfront engineering for that, to run the lines to the building site. Mm-hmm. And geothermal reduces your heating and air conditioning costs by 50%. That equates to about 30-35% of your overall power bill. So with those two things, we have reduced energy demand on most of our houses by around 60 to 70%. At that point, solar becomes more economically feasible, and generally a roof size at that point can accommodate it. Solar, all houses are built solar ready, and then we leave it up to the individual. At the point.
Oh, really? Okay, so you give them the option during the construction, or is it solar ready and you can add it?
That's right. So at any point, solar is constantly developing and progressing, and costs are coming down. Mm-hmm. So we didn't want to lock people into doing it at the time. Where geothermal, you have to do it at the time of construction. That isn't something that's feasible later on. And so we're really moving forward in that. I think as battery storage becomes more available, we're going to see a lot more houses becoming totally energy independent. And that changes the entire issue. When you're talking about affordability, it depends on what you're comparing it to. If someone's moving here from many of your big cities, they think we're an absolute buy.
Sure.
And we have a complete range of prices. But I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, because this 40,000 acres on the edge of it is a small town. This entire area was not self-supporting from a tax basis, because it was mostly low income, either agriculture or this small town that really had no industry and not many jobs.
Right.
And so what this area needed was executive level housing that could balance the tax base, which allowed us independence. In 2007, we petitioned the state legislature would become our own city for this 40,000 acres. But our neighboring city, just 4 miles from Serenbe, is the little town of Palmetto. In Palmetto, you can still buy a house for $100,000. I think average houses there are $165,000. Mm-hmm. So this area did not need affordable housing on that level. We needed the other extreme. But we have rental property, and we have smaller houses. We have teachers living here. We have service people in the service industry. We have a complete range, and it's all tossed together. It isn't that the $300,000 places are out down this way and the $1 million are out that way.
Right.
It's all integrated in the way our communities 100 years ago work. And we encourage carriage houses, and we have a lot of our townhouses in 3 different sections are built on a hill. And so from the street, it's a 2-story townhouse. But the back garden, one has a bocce court, all has a lower level, and those are almost all apartments. People have the option to put an apartment or expand the house.
Right.
And many people find that that's a great way to help cover part of the mortgage, which allows somebody to buy more real estate than they normally would have.
So can our visitors come, or our listeners visit and find out what it's like in Serenbe?
As long as they buy something while they're here. Are
there places to stay?
We're a town. There's no gate. We have the Country Inn, which is the expansion of the historic house where we raised our children. And that is now a Country Inn. Plus, we have several people who bought in the community as second homes. It's a small portion, but they're able to put that into the inn rental program very much like an Airbnb. Okay. Because of so much corporate business we have during the week, they can almost have a free weekend house down here. So, there's plenty of places to stay. We say, come visit us for a meal, a theater, a weekend, or stay a lifetime. Now,
we've talked a little about the future. Do you see growing this beyond Serenbe, or is this your life's work?
Well, it depends on what you consider past Serenbe. I mean, we're in the midst of 65,000 acres. So there's a lot of opportunity to expand the boundaries of Serenbe or to partner with other landowners in this general area. And that we will do. My family is all here in the business. My grandsons are now being raised in the business. So we'll be here for generations to come, I suspect. But we also want to be open source to share this, because this is a model that economically works, it socially works. One of the big things we're going to start looking at is wellness. The cost to our personal health in creating places like we have created for the last several decades. We have more people buying antidepressants than ever before. So there must be something very wrong with the places where we're designing for them to live. And so we want to open this. And so we have created Nygren Placemaking, and that is a consulting arm that we have to help developers or cities. And we also have a conference every fall and that's Nygren Placemaking. It's on our webpage. If you go to the history and look for more, it takes you right to it. And developers literally are coming from all over the world. Sometimes they bring their local city council person or county commissioner to understand this. Sometimes we have the local government, they'll bring a developer that they're wanting to do something like this. And so we're influencing, I believe, developers literally all over the world.
That's interesting because you've really clearly distinguished yourself from what we would think of as a real estate developer. But on the other hand, you are a founder in the sense that a community looks back on the first person in their family who lives in that community for decades or generations. And that's a completely different approach than the one that dominated during the 20th century as we grew the United States so rapidly. Now, how can listeners find out more about Serenbe and possibly get involved and move or create a community of their own?
Well, the best place is to go to our website, which is www.serenbe.com. And that will take you to many links within everything we're doing, whether you're interested in arts or agriculture, education, and many of the exciting things we're up to.
Well, Steve, thank you very much for joining us to talk about Serenbe.
That's great. And you'll also see, because there's been great interest, we have started Serenbe Stories. And you can find that link on our webpage as well. And that's a podcast that really digs deep into a lot of these issues.
That's fantastic. Well, folks, we've been talking with Steve Nygren, who's the founder of Serenbe, a wellness and green-centric community in the Chattahoochee Hills outside of Atlanta. This is Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, your host. We'll be back with another innovator interview soon. Take care, everybody.